Okay. All right. So this is the interview with Sandy Munro. I'm here with Walker Reynolds with 4.0 Solutions. For anyone who doesn't know Sandy Munro, first of all, what are you doing? Second of all, he has a really popular YouTube channel called Munro Live, and where he tears down automobiles. He had an interview with Elon Musk earlier this year that I watched a half a dozen times, and just a prolific engineer and content creator. So we're honored to have you on the show today, Sandy.
Well, thank you so much for interviewing me. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Awesome. So Sandy, have you done any background on us and like who we are and what we do and who our community is and all that kind of stuff?
I have not. It's been like just a little bit of a whirlwind. I know what 4.0 is. I'm assuming that you're into complete system architecture for manufacturing. So I am familiar with the system. I'm familiar with the Siemens tools. So yeah, I know that part. But I did not do a background check on you. So I'm assuming I'm not talking to an alien or something, yeah?
I'm a solutions architect myself, Walker Reynolds. Systems integration has been my plan my entire life. So, I grew up in the Northeast in the 1980s during the great manufacturing exodus. I did my undergraduate work in sociology in the 90s, and I discovered that manufacturing didn't leave because of corporate greed. It left because the Germans and the Japanese leveraged Industry 3.0 better than we did. And in order for us to catch up, we had to go chase cheap labor. So I crafted a plan. My first job was working in a salt mine, as just got lucky, introduced to industrial automation after I graduated from college. And I sort of saw the path to how I could help revitalize manufacturing in the US. So over the course of the last 21, 22 years, I charted this path. I did the first half of my career working for the end user in manufacturing as a manufacturing engineer and as a controls engineer. And then I switched over to systems integration, wholly focused on Industry 4.0. That is to help teach manufacturers how to leverage IIoT and Industry 4.0 concepts to revitalize manufacturing in the United States. And so I own 49 companies, but there are two companies that I own that are at the forefront of this. One is Intellic Integration, which is the systems integration arm, and then 4.0 Solutions, which is what I'm here representing. 4.0 Solutions leads a large community, about 17,000 to 20,000 people, professionals globally, in Industry 4.0. We manage an Industry 4.0 Discord server, which I think at this point has 3,000 to 5,000 members, something like that. And then if you go to iiot.university, that's where we train engineers and we train digital transformation professionals how to lead digital transformation initiatives. So the clients that we work with are obviously the biggest manufacturers in the world in basically every vertical. One of our claims to fame is that we own a data set that is about 1,100 global manufacturers that have been scored on 10 pillars in Industry 4.0. Tesla is right at the very top of that list. If you look at the most digital manufacturers in the world, Tesla is numero uno. They're at they're 2+ standard deviations from the mean on the bell curve. And there's some 1,100 other companies within that bell curve. And we score manufacturers using a concept called the Digital Transformation Maturity Assessment, where we evaluate those organizations and then we basically chart a path. We were talking about a tier 1 automotive supplier just a minute ago that we can't talk about publicly, but they are one of the companies that we've done this for, and we're working with them in the Southeast and their division in the Southeast on helping them digitally transform their organizations. The reason we asked to interview you to meet with you is, you talk Tesla all the time. You're clearly a thought leader as it relates to EV manufacturing and auto manufacturing globally. You and I share many of the very same opinions. I did get a chance to watch a couple of your videos. I've known who you were for probably 5 years, give or take. and your opinion is well respected within the industry. And so we have a podcast, and this is what we're on right now, where we're going to share with our community. So our community, 17 to 20,000 plus people, will get a chance to watch this podcast. And so we kind of do this organic. I have a list of questions that I'm generally going to touch on, but I'm just going to do it organically and just kind of go through the list, and we'll have a conversation. If you got anything you want to ask me, we'll just kind of do it that way. But what I want to start with is this. In your own words, can you tell me why Tesla is so awesome?
Well, actually, you can sum that up real quick. Tesla is awesome because they have an awesome leader. Without a good leader, you really don't go anywhere. And so consequently, Elon Musk is that kind of awesome combination of charisma and intelligence that it takes to make a huge company really successful. Henry Ford I was a good example of somebody who really didn't have the right education, certainly didn't have the right background, but had that charisma and that drive and that intelligence to make things happen. Edison falls into the same category. The problem is we don't see too many of those nowadays because they get educated into a different planet or different zone. So you probably heard this a couple of times, but I obviously I was also in manufacturing, but I decided to take a course that you can get in Canada that you can't get in the United States, where you become, for the most part, an engineer. You take all the engineering courses, but you take no humanities, no English, grammar, none of that. You're interested in only the technology side. Now, they may not even have that anymore, but that's what I took. And so consequently, when you just mentioned here that you took psychology courses, I took those very late in life after people started trying to strangle me. And I've found now that, that's literal, by the way, that's not a figurative speech. But anyway, I found now that without that third element, the ability to psychologically evaluate the situation and the people you're with, it makes it next to impossible. And that's the third little leg in the stool here for Elon Musk. He has that charm or charisma or whatever the hell you want to call it, but the psychological background to know when he's pushed too far, or maybe when it's time to change the subject, or any of the other things that he's done in the past that kind of make him uniquely different from, let's say, a Mary Barra or something.
I say this all the time. We shot a video, I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago or whatever, which was the future of industrial automation. We're really talking about how the industrial automation business is constructed. That is OEMs, distributors, wholesalers, integrators, and how they work together with the end user. Well, not really with the end user, but they.
Oh, yeah, they do, because they also have to have delivery. So you do the full gambit when you're looking at 4.0. Yeah.
In that video, what we talked about was how industry is changing. And one of the challenges that legacy manufacturers have is that they're all run by accountants and human resource professionals. They are not run by technical professionals. And one of the things I tell people all the time, I've been in the room with Elon many, many times with the Model S line back in 2013. And one of the things that stands out about Elon is he is an executive you cannot bullshit. There's no engineers can't trick him into that they know what they're doing, because he spends all of his time, he understands the science, he understands engineering best practices, and he probably, in most cases, he understands it better than the people who are working for him, not the people in his immediate circle. Like, one of the things he really realized is he surrounds himself with really, really, really smart people. But the rank and file, he generally knows way more than the rank and file. And that's just so rare in manufacturing. You just don't see that executive leadership, understanding the technology better. So let me ask you this.
Well, before you do that, there's one thing you should know. So in the early 80s, I went to Japan and I got a chance to talk to Eiji Toyoda, the guy that owns Toyota, okay, or ran it. He knew how many spot welds there were in the rear compartment where the spare tire was going to sit. I was in a room with maybe 15 or 20 executives. I was the lowest ranking person. I can't remember whether it was an 8 or a 9, but I was definitely the lowest ranking person in the room. And they were asking philosophical questions or financial questions, things that didn't interest me at all. I was more interested in something that I saw that I was really intrigued with. And I said, this is not like the other questions. How many spot welds do you have in the rear trunk area? And I described it. And he came back, and somebody else was going to answer, but they looked at him first. And he looked down the table, because he sits in the center of the table. He looked down the table and he said, 111 or something like right off the top of his head. And then he gave me the diameter of the spot weld, or the nugget. And then he told me how many amps they were putting through each one of those things and how many gun shifts they had. And I'm sitting here going, are you kidding me? You just lost everybody in the room except for me. And the only reason I knew what was going on was because I used to work for a company that made that type of equipment, welding equipment. I was totally blown away. And because I asked that question, he actually invited me to dinner with our interpreter and offered me a job, which foolishly I didn't take. But at one time, the Japanese were loaded with executives that were similar to what you'd find with Elon Musk. And the same is true with Volkswagen or BMW or what have you. But they've all moved away. They've all moved away because, oh, no, you don't understand. You have to have an MBA. And that is the downfall of North America. Actually, the downfall of let's say, the Europeans and the North Americans, because at the end of the day, they really hang their hat on it, and they always go back to the same thing. Oh yeah, don't you remember the whiz kids? Well, what people don't remember is that was the turning point for quality. Quality went to hell in a handbasket because all you had to do is push the cars out the door. That's where the difference lies. And if Tesla goes south, it'll be because somehow they push Elon out and they bring in some Harvard guy. And I'm telling you what, it'll flush like the best toilet on the planet. And that's it.
With you 100%. So I'm actually I've got a question later on down in the list that I'm just going to jump to right now, which is this. I do want to make sure I circle back and talk about you specifically, your legacy, and I want to talk about Sandy particularly. But let's go ahead and jump back. Let's talk about the industry stuff first. So, you and I are kindred spirits. You may not know this, but we are. I've read enough of your stuff. I've watched enough of your stuff to understand that you and I think many of the same things. And so I've never asked this question of anyone before, other than myself, and I'm going to ask you this: if there's one message that you personally, Sandy, could give to every manufacturer on the planet, or more specifically, every manufacturer in North America, what would that message be today? That is Sandy Munro passing on a nugget of knowledge to all manufacturers, not just automotive. What would that nugget of knowledge be?
Wow, there's a lot of nuggets that I can think of. I'm trying to sort through to figure out which one would be the most. I would suggest that the one nugget of knowledge is don't listen to the crowd. Elon Musk did not listen to the crowd when he got involved with the Roadster. He didn't listen to the crowd when he put up all of his charging systems. Henry Ford the First said, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they'd say a faster horse. They wouldn't have said a car. I think that brilliant people that have strongly held conviction on doing things in the right fashion, the right way, and Henry Ford the First was definitely convinced that the right way was very moral and geared toward the general population, but it had to make money, not just money for him, but money for his employees, because they were supposed to be looked at as not just a bunch of rabble that you have to argue with continuously every day, but family. He was a big guy on family. I talked to Elon Musk, and we were talking about something, and I can't remember exactly what it was, quality and something or other. And he said, hey, I got to go. I have to go and put my kids to bed. I don't get too much of that from CEOs. I don't see a lot of that. In fact, there's a joke at Ford that if you get to be a certain rank, executive role, then Ford will pay off your fees for getting a divorce, because you're going to be married to the top floor, and that's the way it works. I mean, that's kind of the difference between what Elon Musk is looking at and the way that I've seen and read about other great leaders from that time frame. They really are devoted to the people that are making them the money, the cars and whatnot. And when they change, when they move away from that focus of morality and the passion of getting the job done, that's when everything goes to hell in a handbasket.
Mission, right? I mean, if Elon Musk, if someone was going to ask me to distill Elon Musk down to one word, it would be hard to do, but I would distill him down to the word mission. I was consulting for one of Ford's partners, an EV company that's one of Ford's partners, and they were asking us to help them architect their Industry 4.0 roadmap. And they were under incredible pressure from their investors to become a digital company quickly. Their manufacturing operations digital quickly. And one of the things that I discovered was that there was a lot of people, former Tesla employees, that were working for this customer. And when I walked away from that call, my team, we were debriefing afterwards, and my team said, man, I've never seen a company that had so many former Tesla employees. And I said, yeah, that's not a good thing, because if there's anything that I've learned about Elon Musk, is he doesn't let his A players leave. His A players stay because of the mission. They don't stay for the money, and although they've all become very wealthy, they don't stay for the money. They don't stay for the Tesla brand name. They stay because of the mission. You don't change sides in a war. You don't rank and file you don't move from the ally, from the allies to the Axis mid-war. That isn't what happens. And that means if you're a former Tesla employee working for another EV company, you're probably, and I'm not going to paint with a completely broad brush, but the likelihood that you're one of the A players who was bought into Elon's mission, hook, line, and sinker, is pretty low. And based on my experience. And I walked away from that saying, Elon has every person in his organization bought into the mission that this company is going to further humanity towards sustainability. That is, everyone is bought in hook, line, and sinker. And I mean that, I don't mean that pejoratively. Let me ask you this. Your experience obviously is in automotive, right? You're a person that people listen. You're a person who people listen to specifically in automotive. Obviously, you have a broad experience, but you're a former Ford guy, right? You had a relationship with GM, Munro Consulting. I know that you guys consult for many different verticals, but specifically in the automotive industry, you are a guy people listen to, and they listen to you outside of automotive as well. But specifically as it relates to automotive, because I believe the automotive industry has fundamentally changed. There are many companies, most of the companies that we know of are not going to be around a decade from now, certainly not in making cars, although they think they are, they won't be. But let me ask you this. What is the difference for you between an auto manufacturer who gets it, that understands what's happening over the next 10 or 12 years, and one who doesn't? What is the fundamental difference besides leadership, which we could say they've got the right leadership, those who get it? What is the fundamental difference between the auto manufacturer who gets how the auto industry is changed and will change over the next 10 to 12 years, and one who doesn't?
It's much easier to go in the other direction. Why is it that the ones who aren't getting it in it? Okay, so again, I go back to Eiji Toyota. One of the guys that I was, same trip actually, one of the executives said, asked the question, he said, we have a 5-year plan, and we'd be happy to show it to you if you come to Dearborn. How many years do you look ahead? And Eiji said, I look 100 years ahead. And the guy started laughing. And he said, 100 years? My God, you'll be dead. Your grandchildren might be dead. Why in the world would you look that far? And Eiji said something in Japanese, and the interpreter was sitting next to me. Her name was Kaneko. And I turned around to Kaneko and I said, what did he just say? Oh, it doesn't matter. I said, I'd really like to know. And he said, where there's arrogance, there's opportunity. Where there's arrogance. And the reason that some guys get ahead and some don't, it's normally because of arrogance. That arrogant feeling that they have that says, oh, I'm going to be right because I'm always right and I'm doing exactly what the textbook tells me. There's no moving when you have arrogance. Once you're arrogant, you're done. Hitler was in his bunker trying to plan, the next Reich. I mean, that's the kind of thing that tears the company down. And actually, if you look in some of the different things that are going on right now, there's a lot of people talking about Mary Barra. I don't know her. My wife used to double date with her, but I don't know her at all, hardly. And but I do know one thing. When someone like well, maybe she's drilling more holes in it. But the deal is that she said some stuff about GM leading the way and whatnot. That's arrogance. Everybody laughed. But on the other hand, she refuses to even mention Tesla or Elon Musk's name. That's disrespectful, but that truly is an arrogant attribute that, Alex from E for Electric? Do you know him? Yeah. Okay. He interviewed me last night, and we were talking about that very thing. He was talking about it. And I think that really what you have to do is not how come this guy is successful, because there's probably too many things to try and put into place. But you can certainly nail why, the number one reason why people fail. It's an arrogance that gets in the way of every decision that you have to make. And when you're in that kind of a situation where, well, we always do it this way and that's the way we're going to do it. And that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, because we're just going to go blah, blah, blah. We're great, and we've always been great, and we're going to be great again, and blah, blah. All these things, okay? Instead of saying, okay, what are we doing wrong? How are we going to fix this? Where are we going to get the right people to make this happen? These are the kinds of things, and then honoring the enemy. That's Sun Tzu, right? Honor the enemy because you don't know what he's got stuck up his sleeve. That's the other thing that I've found with great generals or leaders in industry. They're pensive. They think about stuff. They ponder for a while. What's his name? General Colin Powell. General Colin Powell said, plan, execute. And that's kind of the difference between a general that knows what the hell he's doing, like Colin Powell or like General Sun Tzu, and somebody who doesn't.
And
Marcus Aurelius said that you can't learn something you think you already know. And one of the things, working with all of the, the legacy automotive manufacturers, one of the things that stands out is we describe it as the albatross of success. That one of the first things that I have to tell legacy manufacturers is your success 2 decades ago or 3 decades ago doesn't mean a friggin' thing in the market today. And as we talk about Industry 4.0 and as we talk about digital transformation, the first thing I need you to do is forget everything you know about manufacturing. You have to forget everything you know about manufacturing and start from scratch. What would you build today if you started building it today? One of the first things that Elon Musk learned, he'll tell you the biggest mistake he made initially with Tesla was we tried to use the existing automotive supply chain. And then we used too many robots. We tried to use too many the existing supply chain and too many robots. And when they made the decision to create a Tesla ecosystem, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, and what I believe the actual differentiator is for Tesla, when they made the decision to create the Tesla digital ecosystem, including supply chain, that is when the tide changed. I mean, and I'm really surprised that Toyota didn't pick up on this and that they made the strategic mistake in 2018 to break apart that relationship. I mean, they've obviously admitted their mistake and come back to the table, but there was such a huge strategic mistake on Toyota's part in 2018. Yep, go ahead.
You have to remember, Toyota is not run by Eiji anymore. It's by the grandson. And what's the grandson? Oh, MBA. And how's he thinking? How do we make money on every component? How do we make it cheaper? How do we stay the course? It's not the same. Show me a company.
His claim to fame, in his mind, is Toyota is not going to be not that Toyota is not going to be an automotive manufacturer, but his focus is Toyota AI Ventures. His focus is expanding his fingers out into the supply chain for Toyota proper, and that is his singular focus. If you look at these 70 or 80 companies they've invested in that are all digital companies, that on the industrial side, that's all he's thinking about. And to your point, you can tell that Toyota is run by MBAs and accountants at this point right now, and not transformative leaders. Which brings me to Ford. I want to ask you this question about Ford. Ford is clearly the most innovative of the big three, and big three is a misnomer now because it's not really the big three. But why is Ford, in your opinion? Why is Ford the most innovative of the big three? Ford is the only of the legacy companies that never filed for bankruptcy. What is it that differentiates Ford from the other two? Why are they the most innovative, in your opinion?
I think it was because Alan Mulally went to work there. Now, you mentioned that, I spent a lot of time in the automotive, but perhaps you don't know, we helped Boeing quite a bit with the 787, the 767, the 777, and some of the other attributes that they picked up when they bought McDonnell Douglas or acquired McDonnell Douglas. Alan Mulally is the kind of leader that you find that he has a lot of the same traits as Elon Musk. People will follow him off the edge of a cliff because he has a passion that's impossible to ignore. He put in place the aluminum pickup truck. Okay, General Motors threw all kinds of rocks at it and literally poked holes in the back end. See, that's what happens when. But by the same token, if you put those same sharp chunks of flint and drop them into the back of a steel pickup truck, they do the same damage. Elon or Alan, I should say, and Elon have a good deal in common. And I think what happened was during the time that he was there with another guy named Paul Mascarenhas, who was the vice president of engineering worldwide, they did skunkworks kinds of operations to try and put Ford into a good path. Now, prior to the bank meltdown, Ford was in the worst shape of all the different car companies. And I was talking with Alan, because Alan, as soon as he came there, he saw the first car that was given to him, and he said, "I'm no car guy, but this doesn't look right." And he sent that to us, and we found about $2,200 on the front seat by redesigning it. And actually got rid of, I don't know, 3 or 4 dozen no-build kind of scenarios, because the car hadn't really been scrubbed. And so anyway, he asked us to do those kinds of things. But while he was getting that done, he was looking around at his organization, and he predicted that something nasty was going to happen. He mortgaged everything, including the blue oval, so that if something happened, he would be protected. And everybody thought that that was a stupid move. And then the banks melted. And who had the money and who didn't? And who could get even more money, whereas the other guys were kind of like, it's your only option is bankruptcy. I think that I don't think that the Ford family gave Alan Mulally nearly enough credit. And I know for a fact that, like I say, some of those skunkworks that were produced, they paid big dividends. They're paying big dividends now. There's no such thing as somebody making a decision yesterday that shows up in the in the marketplace today. It takes 15 years to move that elephant, and I think what he put in place really made a huge difference. So, if I had one thing to say, I would say that that's probably one of the. He put the right people in positions. He had the right skunkworks. They knew that there was going to two things that they knew, or he knew. One was that the cars are going to go electric, and at the last time I had talked to him, he was looking at about 2040, 2045, and that's when nobody was talking about electric vehicles, and Elon and Tesla weren't even around. And the other thing that he knew was going to happen, and that's VTOLs, vertical takeoff machines. And I don't know if Ford's in it, but my guess is that they probably are. And one of these days, they'll drag one of these things out of a garage, and it'll pop up and fly around. And that's the way Ford is run. They're not run to the point, say, you walk out there, pound your chest, point at something, and then the damn thing fails or burns up or whatever, blows up, or that kind of stuff. So, or it doesn't perform like some of the European companies.
So let me ask you this. So transportation's changing. The future of transportation the future in manufacturing, in my opinion, is contract manufacturing as a service. I think will be is going to play a huge role outside of tooling. Manufacturing as a service is going to play a huge role in the manufacturing supply chain just a decade from now. The market share in manufacturing as a service continues to double year over year. And it'll have a huge impact a decade from now, right? So manufacturing as itself is changing, and transportation is changing. One of the things that I've learned, purchasing my first Tesla, actually, I have a Model S on the way, so I've got a Model 3 and I've got a Model S on the way. Some of the things that I learned about Tesla's value proposition in the market is it's not brand. It isn't the fact that they were first to the electric vehicle, because obviously they weren't. And it's not that they did it best, because there were, the quality issues were well documented, and you guys played a huge role in actually helping to improve those quality issues, specifically around paint and the doors. But On the Model 3, Tesla created an ecosystem. And what I mean by that is, from my iPhone, my Model 3 and my Model S are part of the same environment. I can compare my two cars within my Tesla app. I can look at where they are located anywhere in the world. They get updated in the middle of the night while I'm sleeping. Everybody says the same thing. When I get into my Tesla, and every time people get in my car for the very first time, they go, "This is like being in a rocket ship." And they can't believe how few buttons there are and how everything is through the heads-up display. And when I start to explain to them the amount of data that Tesla collects from all the cars on the road to improve the software, it really blows their mind.
Yeah.
Especially if they work in automotive to begin with, right? So let me ask you this. Tesla's changed the game, obviously, not just in automotive, but in manufacturing proper, right? But you have all these legacy manufacturers out there, these legacy automotive manufacturers out there. Are any of them going to survive? And if so, who, in your opinion?
Okay, legacy manufacturers. I believe that, yeah, right. Okay, I believe that almost all of them will survive, but they'll be very tiny. I think that what you're going to do is you're going to find Tesla's going to be pretty dominant. I think Ford may be able to keep some of its market share, but I think, in trucks and, yeah, if the biggest claim to fame for Ford, or the biggest advantage that Ford has over everybody else, is the Lightning. Holy mackerel. Okay, we talked a little bit about my background. I didn't talk about the shitty life I had when I was trying to do construction. That really sucks. I really hated it. Dragging around a compressor or a generator compressor, and no power, and on and on and on, and eating hot sandwiches that got mayonnaise on them. I can't begin to tell you how nasty things can possibly be. Ford coming out with a Lightning, holy mackerel. Cory and I crawled all over that thing. I crawled under it, we both crawled under it, to have a look at how they did what they did to give a ride that was so nice. That truck's brilliant. That is what's going to hold them in place. If the Mustang gets better self-driving features, that'll hang around. They've got some other things that they're going to have to do, but it's not like they have an albatross hanging around their neck like the Bolt or the Volt or any of the other products. And they certainly didn't bet on a terrible bet on the Hummer. And quite frankly, when I looked at we were looking at the Mustang and the ID4 at the same time, and there was no comparison. Hands down, Ford had a much, much better product. That's the kind of stuff that's going to keep them at least as a viable name. Everybody else, I don't know. Stellantis has a lot of electric vehicles, but most of them are in Europe, and they're really teeny tiny. I don't know what they're going to do when they come here, and I'm almost positive that the Chrysler badge is going to just disappear in favor of a French badge. Like Citroën. It'll probably be Citroën. Anyway, these kinds of things will maybe keep them alive, but the bigger companies that I see coming up, I think a BYD is definitely one. BYD has already planted itself in California making buses. Everybody is buying their batteries. I think that Apple will probably come out with a car. It's not going to be a big one. It's not going to be like a GM or a Ford or something like that, but it'll have a presence. But I think that there's going to be smaller, new entry kinds of vehicles that are going to come to fruition. And I believe that there's going to be a situation where one or two of these smaller companies that are out there right now, EV companies, they're going to become a little more powerful than the rest, and they're going to swallow them up and turn it into like a General Motors. So
you and I are in total agreement on Apple, by the way. Zach and I were just talking about this earlier. You know, if we look at market share 15 years from today in electric vehicles, the thing that we have to understand is that transportation is changing. Okay.
Yeah.
15 years from now, I'm going to be in my early 60s, and I'm in the last generation of people who believe that everyone needs to have their own car. Okay. The generation behind me, they don't think that way, right? A car doesn't symbolize freedom for millennials. It doesn't symbolize freedom. So transportation as a service will become the standard. That doesn't mean it'll be exclusive, but transportation as a service will become the standard. And full self-driving, specifically Tesla's technology, which no question Tesla is going to license the technology or just give it away. No question they're going to do that. Full self-driving is going to make it possible for us to just call a car, and that car is going to pull into the driveway, and I don't have to have some strange guy driving it, and I'm just going to hop in the car, and it's going to take me to where I want to go, and then I'm going to leave it. And that is the future of transportation as it relates, especially for urbanites. What's most important to understand, in my opinion, is the importance of the digital ecosystem to products. One of the beautiful things about Tesla is that Elon Musk doesn't approach the vehicle as a product he's selling. He really treats it as an application he's selling. And if you take a step back and you look at it as an app in a digital ecosystem that's got wheels, that's what Tesla vehicles are. And Apple has the biggest digital ecosystem in the world. And so what I ultimately believe is going to happen is, I don't think Apple's going to try and develop a car from the ground up. I think if they do, they're insane. They're great at manufacturing, but they really would be better off gobbling up one of these EV companies that have already done the first 60% of the work. Mm-hmm. I believe Apple's going to have a much bigger piece of the pie 12 to 15 years from now. It's going to, I would not be the least bit surprised if it's Tesla 1, Apple 2, and then everybody else. I think the big unknown is China. All of the various manufacturers. China's going to be able to manufacture cars a lot cheaper. The question is, are they going to be selling to their own market, or are they going to be selling globally? You know, will they be able to make inroads into Europe and in the United States when there's a lack of trust in the Chinese government without some type of social revolution or political revolution? So those are some unanswered questions. But I'm in agreement with you 100%. I absolutely believe Apple is going to be, and I have no problem putting money on it, that Apple is going to become a major player in the EV market, simply because they've got the digital ecosystem that everyone needs. Everyone else has to build it. Everyone else has to build it along with mastering the art of manufacturing cars. And I think it's way harder to build the digital ecosystem than it is to build cars. With that, let me ask you this. So, your legacy, Sandy, I mean, when I'm, here in, another decade and a half from now, when I'm hopefully in the spot you're in, I'll be thinking about my legacy. And so let me ask you this, what is your legacy, or what do you want your legacy, Sandy Munro's legacy, to be when you're sipping coconut water on the beach? What is it you want people to be saying about Sandy, when it is you decide to retire?
Well, Dr. Deming said retire and die. So, and he did work right until the end. Like, I had dinner with him maybe a month or so before he died, and he was still pretty active at 93 or 94, I can't remember. So retiring is not on my list of things to do right now. I'm a relatively simple guy. I grew up poor. I started working for a living at 9, picking apples or walnuts or any other damn thing, anything to make a buck. And I don't really need to have a statue or a big plaque or something. My legacy would be is, Sandy Munro got up every day, went to work, and did things in a fair and equitable way. He had morals, and he stuck by them. Told the truth and paid the bills, and did his best to stay away from the IRS. So that would be kind of like, that would sum it up. That's the best I could come up with.
A solid stoic answer. Marcus Aurelius or Seneca would be very proud of you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, believe it or not, I'm old, but I didn't hang around with those guys.
Let me follow it up with this. The most important, you've done a lot in your career. In your opinion, what's the most important thing you've done in your career?
The most important thing I've ever done in my career. Well, there's a lot of answers to that. There's different levels. Everybody has different levels. Bringing new life into the world. I think that would have to be the number one thing. Number one thing. You're asking questions I never. I was tricked. You're asking psychological questions, and I was not prepared for. I've done a lot of things that I'm really happy about. One of the things, actually, if we're looking at a project, probably the project I liked the best was an intravenous pump that was used for neonatal, and because up till that point in time. You could get an intravenous pump strapped onto your prenatal kid or postnatal kid, but you signed a piece of paper to say that the kid's going to die maybe, so because we can't meter the fluid out fine enough. When we came up with that new intravenous pump, that was a big deal for me. I really felt proud about that because my son, when he was growing up, had to he was sick a lot, and he had to have a pump put on, and every time I signed that piece of paper, I thought, you know what, this could be a death sentence. So I got rid of a little stress, if you like, from that project.
How did that come about? How did that? How did you get involved in that?
Company was going out of business. They had a flat line. They said, "Oh," I asked them. I said, "Well, where are you in the industry?" And they showed me a graph, and it just went like that. And I said, "Is that your production rate?" No, that's our revenue stream." "Show me your production rate." They didn't really look, again, MBAs, they didn't look at it as, hey, we're going out of business. They said, no, see, look, we've got a steady flow of cash here. Well, all they did was just keep raising the rates for the price of the product, and they could get it. In some cases, some hospitals, that's all they could do was buy that thing because getting into service and stuff like that was a real big issue. So when I went in there, I said, well, you're going out of business. And then one of the clowns said that they were going to try and win the Malcolm Baldrige Award. And I said, the only award you're going to get here is like a stupid guy of the afternoon. There's no way that you can't win anything here. So anyway, we started looking at different things, different attributes, and I was doing a lot of manufacturing, and I walked around and I said, "This is a shit show. You've got no chance of making one product correctly here." And sure enough, when I got to the end of the line and I checked it out, there was no first-time capability, zero, none. It was just too difficult a product. So we got into a little workshop. We do something called lean design, where we reduce the number of parts and improve the manufacturability of the product and add features, and usually always come up with less cost, less hours, more capability for going into automation and things like that. Well, we went into this one, and I had just come from a DoD kind of a project, and I knew how to meter fluids, any kind of fluid, at any temperature at a much finer rate. So we took that information and plunked it into a new design. And I talked to the nurses and whatnot about, you know, what's going on, what do you like or not like about this pump? And they told me everything I needed to know. And I said, your pump's too heavy. It doesn't work all the time. Every time it goes into for steaming, for cleaning, it comes back, and a lot of times the thing freezes and breaks. So I got a hold of one, I looked inside, everything's made out of stainless steel. Yeah, that's great, but that's not that doesn't like steam. Why are you doing it like this? Why don't you make it out of plastic? Oh no, plastic, oh no, no one will want that. The pump we made it out of plastic, because when you take that and clean it, guess what? It loves the steam. It's great. It's there for, it loves it. It's like taking a hot shower. It gets clean, and the plastics become more lubrous. It worked out just perfectly, right? And then we got rid of things that the nurses hated. The doors on the front. There was no doors left anymore. We got rid of that. We added a new feature for how the product was going to milk. It uses a peristaltic pump, so it's like milking a cow. And we put that in, and all kinds of things. Dropped the price by, I think it was like 50%. But that was the cost, I should say. But we raised the price because it was so much better. It had other features. And the lawyer said, well, they didn't really want to do it because they didn't want anything to do with, you know, if some kid dies, you just put a 1 down and you're just running zeros until they tell you to stop. Anyway, at the end of the day, the thing took off. We filled up the factory. Then we built a second factory. Then we went to Japan and put a factory up there. Then we put a factory in Ireland. And then we put, I don't remember what, the factories went up like crazy. We were dominating the marketplace, pretty much clobbered everybody. Nobody saw that coming. And having that one saying it's neonatal, that immediately set everybody, they didn't care about what was sitting in their warehouses. This was a for sure way of making sure that anybody that gets strapped to this thing is going to survive, and metering is going to be dead nuts accurate. So that was one of my favorite things. So I like I say, I've saved cars, or helped. Our company has helped save cars. The Camaro Firebird, the Cadillac Stream, Ford's, a couple of Ford vehicles, Chrysler's, like the new Ram that won Luxury Vehicle of the Year. Munro had a lot to do with that. So those are great things, but nothing that really touched me as much as for product, if you want to talk about a product, as that intravenous pump.
Awesome. So before we close it, I'll ask you what's next for Sandy. Zach wants to chime in here real quick.
Yeah. As a subscriber of Munro Live, I really like to think that one of the biggest impacts you've had on the industry is Munro Live, and reaching millions of people, revitalizing excitement for the manufacturing industry. I think that that's going to be a huge impact that continues to, produce impact for years to come. So yeah, I really appreciate the videos and the work that goes into that, Sandy.
Well, let me give some credit here to where credit is due. When we first started tearing apart the very first Model 3, which was about a year and a half before we did the Model Y, Alistair, my son, he wanted us to get it into YouTube. I was successfully talked out of that by all the engineers here, because after all, engineers don't care about YouTube. Now, when the Model Y started to show up, Cory, the guy who's the president now at Munro, also about the same age as my son, he said we should start doing, a YouTube channel. He invented the Munro Live name. He's the one who filmed the first videos basically on his iPhone. We don't use anything but iPhones for our stuff. So this Munro Live is a great legacy for Munro and Associates, but it's not mine. I have to tell you, this is something that came from the people around me, and that's what happens when you. I like to think that we have a pretty good company here, and I like to think that this isn't the Sandy Munro show. This is a group of really clever guys guys and gals that come together periodically to come up with new, exciting, and great new ideas. So it's not just me that had to do with Munro Live. If somebody has to get the accolades, it would be Cory for making it happen, and Alistair, my son, for trying to get something to work.
Amen. It's funny. This wasn't my idea. Zach is the one who deserves most of the credit for our digital media. He tricked me into the first whiteboard video that was never supposed to be published. He tricked me into doing it, and it went viral. And now I trust his judgment on it. So there are many times where Zach suggests we do something content-wise that if it was left up to me, I wouldn't do it. I would have never thought of it. I would have never come up with it. But he's generally right. So with that, Sandy, let me ask you this: as you know, we'll take it out with what is next for you. What's next for Sandy Munro and Munro Consulting? What's the next big step in y'all's legacy?
Okay, well, I don't know if it's our legacy, but our Tesla Plaid shows up on Friday, tomorrow actually.
You're going to do the teardown?
And first we're going to do a road trip, so we're going to go from here to Indianapolis to Atlanta. We're going to go to Clemson University, I hope, and then come back up. And I'm looking for assistance here. Where are we going after Clemson?
Philly,
Boston.
Toronto, Montreal.
Oh yeah, Montreal, Toronto, and London and Windsor. So there's some, as we're going around, there's some places that I want to visit because there's some technology that I want to know more about. So Montreal and Boston and Toronto and Windsor, they all have some technologies I want to know about, and they're green and they're new and whatnot, and so that's one thing. I don't know if you saw the one on LA, the YouTube that we did when I was in LA, and I bought one of those Chinese cars, and that's a really small company. I was very impressed. It's got a great price. I want to see what it's like. We've purchased that. I don't know when we're going to get it, but we've purchased that car, and it's going to be coming here, and that's going to be a teardown, and that should shake up the OEMs here in North America and in Europe, right down to the core, because what I saw and what I heard is going to mean that somebody's going to be able to buy a car for a price that they can actually afford, and it'll be a good EV. But that's, I'm hopeful but skeptical. I want to see for myself, right? Just like Dr. Deming, check it out for yourself. So that's kind of like what we see coming down the pike in the near future. And then in the distance, I'd like to. I actually think that the next level of transportation is a VTOL. So we designed an airplane, but unfortunately it was in 2008, and our financial partner there was Lehman Brothers. It didn't quite work out, as it were. So, but I'm very, very interested in trying to figure out how to get into that. I think we need to have a third dimension in our lives, and
you're going up. Elon's going down. You're going up.
No, actually, I think that Elon's also going up, but he ain't telling anybody. you don't. A good general keeps a few secrets. So that, I think, is what he's doing. But that's kind of down the road. We'll see what happens.
Awesome, man. I'm excited to see what you guys got. For those in the community, if you're not subscribed to Munro Live, please do that now. We'll go ahead and we'll link their channel in the description below. And with that, hey, Sandy, I truly appreciate you taking the time with us. It's been a pleasure and an honor, my man.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm definitely going to have to look some more into your background and whatnot. I apologize for not knowing as much as you know about me. I should have known more about you. But anyway, thank you, Walker. I appreciate it.
You, my man.
That's exactly how Walker will go into interviews, unprepared and just authentic, shoot from the hip. And thanks again, Sandy, and thank you, Cory, and everyone else at the team at Munro and Associates. And thanks for subscribing to Munro Live, and that'll wrap it up.
Okay, thanks, Zach. Thank you very much.